of the 25 events. Again, an outstanding achievement. Congratulations to our students and to our advisors. I have gone over to visit them while they're in action at the high school. A lot of brain power in that room. A lot of brain power in that room. It really is amazing to watch them in action. And lastly, I would like to congratulate our cheerleaders who recently competed in Florida at the National Cheerleading Competition. We commend them on a wonderful season and their commitment to representing West Babylon with great pride. Finally, later on this evening, during my superintendent's community presentation portion, we are going to be discussing our UPK program. Mr. Payne will be doing so for us, and we will also be presenting 2 new course proposals for the junior high school and senior high school. Thank you, and congratulations again to our students for these exceptional accomplishments.
Okay, I think you're up again.
Okay, yes I am, which means I'm going to pivot over to Mr. Payne. Yes, that's right, we do not have any of these here. Take it away, Mr. Payne. Perfect timing, Mr. Legidis. Thank you for joining us.
Kept it suspenseful. Bob, I think I'm going to hit you up. Bob, I'm going to hit you up to hit the slides. Is that okay? Yeah, I would do it here, but I don't think I have anything. So, all right. So we're going to talk about UPK tonight. There's a lot of fairly recent changes that we have to kind of get well versed in, and then some potential long-range changes that we have to discuss. So hit it. We're going to talk about 3 main things here, right? And this is going to be pervasive throughout the presentation tonight, which is really dependent upon how we're looking at when we talk about our UPK funding. I'm not sure why there's no spaces on the top there, but there was at one point. Really, we're talking about funding from New York State. We're talking about student enrollment, in other words, the number of families and students that are interested in our program, and then we're talking about space. I'm going to cover that for just a few minutes. Funding, I think we all know that the UPK program is entirely funded at West Babylon right now by the state of New York. We do pick up some ancillary costs, and we'll talk a little bit about that because that does have some bearing in what we're going to discuss tonight. But the funding for the actual kids and for the cost of the program is picked up entirely by New York State. Student enrollment, of course, this makes sense, right? We're completely dependent upon the number of kids that want to do it and families that want to do it. That'll determine the number of sections that we need. And then room availability, which has been a fairly recent phenomenon for us. Obviously, there are particular criteria related to UPK programming. You can only put 18 kids in a room. Mr. Legidis is going to talk a little bit tonight about some of the other criteria, square footage, bathrooms, things like that, or access to bathrooms, egresses. So the number of acceptable rooms we have, and as well as outside providers, affects the total number of UPK sections we can kind of give. So Bob, you can hit it. Right now, I'm going to go over those 3 pieces. We get $6,100 per student from New York State. We portion this out to Scope. Scope uses our classrooms and charges us about I'm projecting this out, about $110,000 per section. That works out to about $6,100 and some dollars per student for 18 kids. Like I said, the district does pick up other costs associated with those programs in our building, like custodial, nurse, and using some of the building. We do
Building administrator.
Building administrator, psychologist, sometimes some special ed pieces. But the other flip side of that, these are eventually our kids. They are our students, so it's kind of a two-way piece. But all the money we get is directly passed on to Scope. We literally take it, we hold it, and we just give it to them. And therefore, what we do, and I've explained this to the board in the past, we have to keep each section fully enrolled at 18. If we go to 17, we're still paying Scope that $109,800. So if we go down to 17, we've got to put another kid in that month. Otherwise, we lose funding from the state. We got about a month's leeway on this. So it's a careful juggling act, and as such, we try to keep a wait list of about 10 students. And 10's cutting it close, because sometimes we've had a lot of people drop. We try to keep 10 students before even if we could, open up another section. Because if we just open up the number of sections for the kids we have, we run the risk of losing money as soon as a kid drops out. And we do have significant students that drop out throughout the year. Okay, hit it. New York State Ed, this is just, I'd say hot off the presses, but probably cool, like a week ago. Victoria got it to us. This is important. And the cool thing about this is everything I say really makes no difference because it's not official till May. So you'll hear me say this like it's the truth, but don't listen to me because I have no idea what's actually going to happen. This is literally from the state of New York. Over the last few days, we received a number of inquiries about the governor's universal UPK proposal in the executive budget, specifically how $10,000 per pupil fits into the amount for 26-27 UPK aid. We have confirmed the below information with the division of the budget and want to provide as much clarity for school districts as possible. The program is indeed for all 4-year-olds to be eligible for UPK through a requirement that by 28-29, districts will provide a full-day slot to any 4-year-old child whose parents have requested it. This requirement can be met either in district or through out-of-district providers. So I don't know if this is official. Remember, I'm going to sound like I know what I'm talking about, but I don't. But by 28-29, there is something out there that states any child or any a child of a parent that's 4 years old, that's a West Babylon resident, is going to be guaranteed a slot for UPK. I don't know how that's going to work, so you can ask me a bunch of things. I'll do my best to answer them. But at $10,000 a slot, here's where some of the math comes in. $10,000, this is going to seem simple, but is more than $6,100, right? So that's a huge increase, but it's not so much of an increase where it overcomes some of these hurdles of space and teachers and things like that. So it's going to be a juggling act. We're going to talk tonight about some of that juggling. But just to give you a little history, student enrollment is a factor, like I talked about, right? So I'm going to give you the history of West Babylon UPK. 21-22, we had 76 interested kids. We put 76 kids in UPK. We received a grant amount of $410. We had more money than we had students. So it was probably a good problem to have. We also obviously had enough room, so everything was good. Life was good that year. 22-23. We had 138 enrolled kids. We had 145 people apply. It was really tight. We didn't have enough money, and that's without the wait list like I talked about. So we put a wait list of about 6 kids. We had to fill up sections. We didn't have enough money to get those other 6 kids in. It was really tight that year. 23-24. Again, now you can see we really didn't have enough money because we got a lot more people interested. We just didn't have enough money to supply it. Interestingly, then the amount went up significantly from the state. 24-25, we had 126 enrolled. We had 147 applicants. We got money that year. We got a lot of money, but that was the first year we ran into not enough space. So we had to cut it. And of course, we know this year where we are. We don't have enough space. Even if we did have enough space, I'm going to tell you, we wouldn't even have enough money to get all of the applicants that we had. We just wouldn't have enough. But way before we ran out of money, we ran out of space. So tonight we're going to talk a little bit about space, of course, constantly referencing back to money and the number of kids. So here's space, right? Room availability. This is our current year. At Sanapog, you're running 3 sections, JFK 2, Tooker 1, South Bay 0. There's no room. It's a total of 6 sections. I don't know why the formatting's running over, but we'll work on that. 6 sections this year. Next year, this is confusing, I get it, but I wanted to make sure that everyone understands. It looks like next year, and Mr. Hanley and Dr. Farrelly can confirm, we're probably going to lose a section of 5th grade, most likely in JFK, correct? I'm guessing here. This is all guesswork. So great news, you just picked up a classroom. Bad news is we're probably going to need 2 more classrooms for kindergarten coming in, right? And when I say 2, there might be 2 sections of kindergarten, but even if there's 1, there may be special education requirements that are going to cause us to use up 2 rooms. So we saved 1 room, but we're going to probably need 2. So what did I put up there? Between Sanapog and JFK, because it's a north-south thing, depending upon where the section of kindergarten goes, I put them double because I can tell you next year we're probably going to be able to house 4 sections in some variant of those 2 buildings, right? Is it going to be 3 and 1? I hope not. It could be. Hopefully it's 2 and 2. But some variant between Sanapog and JFK is going to have 2 and 2. Tooker and South Bay will still be the 1 for a total next year in our elementary schools of fitting 5, not 6. So we're going to lose a section next year no matter what. That's a big piece. So we had our curricular committee. We've been meeting probably 3 or 4 meetings. We looked at increased sections from outside providers, which we're continuing to look at, and we're trying to get outside providers to agree. We had 1 outside provider last year that we ran into some difficulties, as we all know. I think there were some insurance concerns. The good news is, right, if we get this extra money, maybe more outside providers will be able to do it. The problem is, though, I'm not going to be able to tell the outside provider they have the money until May, which is going to be very late in the game. And they're not going to sign a contract until we guarantee them a set amount. The other piece that we were talking a little bit about, and Dr. Farrelly and I have spoken about this, is these outside providers have to maintain certified teachers, acceptable curriculum. It's very difficult to keep UPK teachers. They get paid less than contractual teachers. Sometimes they get other jobs. Without a deep kind of roster of backup teachers, if the outside providers lose that teacher and don't rehire someone who's certified, we run the risk of losing funding. And therefore, remember, the money goes through us. If we don't get the money, do we then still pay the provider? That's going to be a weird situation to be in. So there's going to be some hurdles with this. But a big piece is looking at these outside providers. We looked at using relocatable structures. It just isn't feasible. It's a significant, I think even to lease them is something like $250,000 or $300,000 per relocatable. That's without bathrooms, heat, utilities, all that. The committee did a great job looking at it. It isn't a viable option for our UPK students. We talked about increased sections at our elementary buildings. I just went through the numbers for you. This is the number of the increased sections. It's actually decreased for next year. There is no room in the elementary buildings for increased sections. So then we looked at space at the junior high school and senior high school. We're going to talk tonight about some of those proposals, and we're going to answer questions because there are a lot of them. We sent groups to the junior high school to look specifically at the wing down by Cafeteria B, by the custodial, where the music is, because you need areas that have separate entrances, and you want them as far away from the general populace as possible. They also looked at the music and the tech wings up in the by the stage there, by Eagle Hall, and that little wing where the boiler room is, for those of you that are familiar with. Both of those areas didn't give us enough sections for the amount of time and effort it would take to make those usable classrooms, as well as the area down by Cafeteria B. We just couldn't close the cafeteria off. So that one right away wouldn't be a viable option. And then the area behind the stage with the band room there, for those of you that know the room, there's access from the band room to the stage. It's a unique space. So that room probably wouldn't be available, so you really wouldn't be getting much space at the junior high school. We then looked at the high school, and that's where the committee came to some agreement that this is a possibility. So here's the controversy, right? Like, what do we do with the high school? We're going to talk a little bit about that tonight, but really what it's going to boil down to, if we're going to use the high school, what are we getting for it and what's being displaced, right? And then I guess the important question too is how much does it cost? But we'll talk about that too. Because if we even use the high school, we've got to talk about relocating potential resources, and then what do we get for it? Now, this new curveball is this $10,000 per student, and I'm going to just throw this out there before I turn it over to Mike. This changes things a little bit for us, because if Scope still charges us $6,100 per student, we're allowed to take some of that money back, not the Scope money, right, but the state money, because in essence, remember I talked about those ancillary services we provide? We can get reimbursement for that. Right now, we can't because we're giving all the money to Scope, but since there's more money now, there is money potentially for getting reimbursement back for all of these students, all of the UPK students we house. It's an interesting phenomenon because we've never run into it. And going through this, that works out to be almost $4,000 per student in a class of 18. You're talking about $72,000 per section. I'm not going to say it's going to make or it's not going to break us, but it's certainly going to help us fund some of these programs, or at least put it in the back of our mind. It cannot be used for construction. So that's going to be a big piece. We've crossed that barrier. There's going to be some pieces I'm going to talk about after Mike goes about construction and things like that. It absolutely cannot be used for construction. It could be used for the nurse, maybe some administrative costs, desks, smart boards, carpets, anything else, cleaning the rooms for custodial pieces. It can be used for that. There are even provisions where we can potentially use it toward a playground, right, specifically for the UPK. But it cannot be used for construction or setting these rooms up, which is a little bit of a gray area. So I'm going to stop there for a second. This is going to be Mike's slide. Questions so far, because we're about halfway in, maybe a third. Go ahead. Now less. Go ahead.
All right. So I have a few questions.
Sure.
So, starting with so now that the balance, that 3,900 after the 6,100, is scope capped at that 6,100, or because they know more money's available, they're gonna?
It's a good question. So right now, we got a letter from them, Dr. Farrelly got a letter, stating that their rates are, I think, 6189 next year per student. Remember, for a guaranteed, it's not per student, it's for a guaranteed class of 18. So as of right now, unless they changed, and I don't know if, hopefully they wouldn't, we're committed, we're already committed at that amount for next year. Don't forget, remember I said, I'm not guaranteeing this 10,000 yet either, although
Right.
I'm talking like I am, I really can't.
Okay. And then I know right now with the little ones being at the elementary schools, they get additional opportunities that, not necessarily district provided, but like the PTAs, for example. So they get to participate in a lot of those additional opportunities and enrichment programs. If there's a group then that's set at the high school, how can we justify an equal?
Can I answer that later? I have a good answer for you, a great answer.
Okay.
But let me save it at the end, because I want to present that as another piece. It's not going to be the same. We're not going to necessarily be able to get PTAs in, but I think we've got an interesting answer that will address that. If I could hold off,
Okay.
I promise, I won't forget it.
And then obviously.
Isn't that suspenseful? Like everyone know.
Especially robotics, near and
Yes.
dear to my heart.
Yep.
Now, if you get rid of a room like that, or I guess the print area, is there space for those classrooms then to move to? Because they're obviously then commingled with the other population, right? Because we
Yes.
have to keep them separate. And what if there becomes like a influx of interest for the secondary students to want to
Right.
do a tech or whatever, now that we changed the whole.
So Ms. Johnson, that time is jumping the gun a little bit, but she sees the map. So what we're going to propose is a specific wing of the high school that is separate, that does house these areas. And my answer to you is, this is an easy answer, right? My answer is going to be yes. We would not get rid of any program in any way, shape, or form, nor would we want them to lose those resources. It's going to take some juggling, but I'm going to tell you on behalf of scheduling a high school, a junior high school, which is what I'm more familiar with, there is plenty of room at the high school for rooms. I'm not saying they're the best rooms and they would have to be refurbished, right? But the robotics space can be placed in another classroom. We could probably schedule 2 robotics rooms, right? They wouldn't be down in that wing, but I could fit, if there were interest there, you could probably fit 2 robotics labs if you gave me the money to make the classroom with just as much space, if not more, from the classroom space we have. The high school itself, and I think we all know this from, I'm going to go back from when I started, our enrollment is down significantly. So even though the high school looks filled, there are plenty of rooms throughout the day that are empty. You would simply have to consolidate them, right? You would hole off 1 hole or 2 whole classrooms and use them for that. In my opinion, the print shop could go to the junior high school. There's an empty tech room there, which has the same access. It would be more central to the district. So the print shop would have to move then to that other location. And then the only other location that we'll be proposing tonight, sorry to take steal your thunder, is that empty shop room that's currently used for storage. So that wouldn't necessitate any move at all. So really, based on the proposal that we're going to make in high school, right now, print shop, potentially move it to the junior high school. I'm not saying that's easy, right? I'm not making it seem like this is an easy move nor a good one. Robotics lab would move to at least another classroom with all the resources that they have now.
And are there, I know you said we can't use any of that money for construction purposes, but
Right.
are there grants available that you can apply for these types of changes?
So I don't know of any grants, but I am going to tell you, if the board is interested in moving this direction, we would probably need to do a few things, right? There's potentially some capital pieces here that we may have to look into. I'm not speaking ahead of myself here. It's something that would have to be discussed with the board. The other thing I would love to look at, and I am looking into, is the long shot chance of using Title I's for some light construction, like room refurbishment. There's provisions in Title I that allow us, and it's a numbers game too, to do minor adjustments to room to make more space for UPK. If you reach a particular poverty level and you can do what's known as a school-wide program as opposed to a targeted one, we're right at the cusp. We're at, I think the targeted versus school-wide program is 40% poverty. I think this previous year, we're at 41 or 42. If next year is the same, if we're a go with this, and I can't guarantee this, we would potentially look at using some Title I money for some of these construction costs for the expansion of the program into the high school.
Is that how like districts like Bay Shore, they built like that entire preschool?
I don't know. I do think that off the top of my head, I think Bay Shore has a higher poverty level, so they probably have more leeway and probably a higher grant. I would never speak for them, but I would assume they probably were able to tap into other resources that we can't. So.
I have a
I
Go
got
ahead.
questions, but I'll wait till you're done.
You got. I'm going to let Mike go, but go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, Dr.
Chris,
Nowak.
just
Rock paper scissors.
so at the pardon the pun, but at the risk of scoping out classrooms when you went to the junior high, was there a cluster of classrooms that the committee looked at and discounted? It was just you just went to.
They went to. I didn't go. The committee went to both buildings. It was about 5 or 6 people. They looked at some of the 6th grade cluster areas, but the problem with the 6th grade clusters, it's either above or below existing space. Preferably, it would be ground floor, which would then mean you'd have people above and stairwells that would either have to be closed off or watched. And then, like I said, that back wing by the cafeteria and the wing down by the stage, down by the music rooms. Those were the 3 areas that they looked at the junior high school, and for a variety of reasons, they ruled those spaces out.
So in addition to the egress piece, there's also the bathroom component in terms
There's
of
bathroom
classroom
components, there's
locations.
square footage we're probably fine on, and then separation from the other program.
So what are those requirements when it comes to the bathrooms and square footage?
I don't know. That's a great question. So I'm going to defer that to
Okay.
Mr. Legitis, who hopefully can answer it, but if he can't, he'll just distract you.
Just
I
a
don't know.
question there. The map, that whole. We're not suggesting the entire PK program is brought back to the high school. How many sections are you projecting?
So right now, and this is a lot of ifs with this, I would say we're projecting 3 classrooms at the high school using the space, and I'm not even sure the bathroom piece will work. That's why I'm going to leave it to Mike, because there's going to have to be some work that have to be done. The 3 spaces that we would be proposing would be what's currently the print shop,
Right.
what's currently the robotics room, and what's currently that empty space. There is a bathroom. There's 2 bathrooms down there. One is in an office that's right by the doors when you walk in, just meaning there's plumbing there. I'm not saying it's a usable bathroom. And the other is in one of those wood shops. There's a full bathroom. I don't know that that's enough to even get you 3 though. Like I'd be lying if I said, oh yeah, that's fine. It's just the potential that it could happen. But before any of the potential is explored, the board has to have a discussion about whether it's even worth pursuing it.
Yeah, I'm looking at. I don't really know how is that closed
that's
off.
not a clear map, right?
How
Like
is that
if that were
closed
a
off
treasure
from
map.
the rest of the high school environment?
So what would happen is that wing, for those of you that are familiar with going down that wing, my suggestion, and there's a reason for this, would be you'd want a paraprofessional there to make sure that kids can't go in and out. Even if you put doors there, you can't lock kids in or out. You just can't lock it. And then, in essence, there would be no way for any other kids to get there. You have exterior doors, which they wouldn't be able to get, those would be locked. So the only mixing you would have of kids would be in that main hallway. And in that hallway now, there's I think there's a tech room, there's 2 tech rooms, and then there's a bunch of offices, right? So it's not a high traffic area because it's a dead end. I'm not saying it's perfect at all, but it's probably the most isolated we can get for these kids in that environment.
And in the junior high school, that the building wing there, the administrative wing of the junior high school, that wasn't something that.
The science rooms?
No, where the offices are.
Yeah, the business
it's-
office.
Oh, yeah, no, I would love the business offices. I'll take them, and that would be a home run.
They used to be the science rooms.
Yeah. That would be an absolute home run to take the business office. I just don't know where we'd put them, but yeah, that's a perfect space.
Right. Well,
We discounted it.
The only reason
Yeah.
I think is because it is closed off
Closed
by
off,
doors.
right.
Yep.
It has its own entrance.
Right.
And
There's some
it's not
egress
this
pieces there that there's going to be a
inappropriateness of
problem.
these older kids and younger kids.
So one of the things we've seen is, and it makes sense, right? Because these are little kids, normal emergency egress windows don't work. So even those rooms, and knowing them, you'd probably have to make some modifications to make sure each of them are aggressible, if that's a verb. But that would be a good space. I do remember, and I'm going to go back in time here, when South Bay had the fire, We did look at, when we were going to put South Bay into the junior high school, I was principal at the time, about using the business office, and it was just not a feasible, because we would have needed that space to get South Bay in that building, which is why eventually we couldn't do it, but there wasn't any usable way to put the business office, so I told the committee, don't even look at the business office. We've tried to move them before, and we just weren't able to. I could be lying, but I just remember from that time, the district looked at moving that business office, and it wasn't a feasible option.
Right.
But that would be a great space.
Just quickly,
Yep.
I don't expect you to know this number because
Thank you.
kindergarten enrollment isn't like completely even started yet, but we had 204 applicants. What's the anticipated kindergarteners that would be going in?
That kindergartens are looking 1 or 2 sections more next year.
So, I mean, there was 204 applicants. How many kids do we think are coming in? Like 240 you're saying?
Coming into kindergarten or UPK?
Yeah. No, kindergarten, this group. So like
So
what
this
percentage
group,
of
this
kids
UPK
apply?
group coming into kindergarten, we're looking at an increased amount, 260
So
something?
you have 246 potential kindergarten coming in. Last year was 210.
So about
so-
40 kids didn't apply to the UPK program
Oh,
district-wide.
if you're I wouldn't be able to
Okay, yeah,
determine
okay.
that because you got some people coming into the
Possibly,
district
okay.
and stuff like that, but.
And then the separate spaces just because of the age gap, like they're integrated now? Okay.
Yes. Yeah, you right, and Mike will talk more, but you definitely need if you're going to put them in a building with older kids, you definitely need some separation, some clear separations between the two. All right, so,
One quick
Yeah, go
question.
ahead.
Are we mandated to take every kid that applies, or we could just say we only have room for
right
5?
now, we're not mandated. I think that's that unknown, right? When I said in the beginning of the presentation, at some point, someone, probably not me, is going to be having this conversation with you, maybe not you, about maybe we will be mandated in 28, 29, it looks like. That's a possibility, but I don't know how that's going to happen. It's something that some version of it's coming down the pike. I don't know what that is.
Okay, thank
So
you.
we're a couple years ahead of the game
So
here.
many districts, right, that will struggle with the space issue
Right.
across the board.
And there's districts that don't even offer it now, that
Correct.
forfeit the funding. They can't do it. So I don't
They don't
even,
have the space.
like, I know
Space.
we're getting a lot of anxiety about this impending deadline. I don't have that anxiety personally because I don't even know how they would mandate every district universally do it. It's just, I don't see it as a possibility.
They mandated electric buses.
Yeah.
And they have no plan for this. They have.
Understood.
Hey, figure it out.
Right, no, but with that, they're saying there's the costs that you can't get grants for are on you. With this, they're saying it's a fully funded program. If it's a fully funded program, then it shouldn't cost you money outside of your ancillary costs.
Right.
That's the way I look at it. And I know the low-hanging fruit of the argument that's gonna come from people is, oh, if we had the other bill, we can't forfeit over $1 million in savings and revenue for a program that's supposed to be fully funded. We would be in a complete opposite direction. So it's not fully funded, and I think the problem we'll run into, because a few years ago, I remember Scope wanting an increase in the amount per student, and we can only give what we could give. Well, they have a balance sheet. They're gonna see that the state's giving 10,000.
Right.
To say 61 minus 10 is what we have, I find that hard to believe.
I do think that, and this is just my thoughts, this isn't worth that much, but I do think with this increased funding, you're going to slowly start to see some competition to scope, but even with our outside providers. So one of the things I would suggest, if we ever had space, this is that discussion. If we do have the space, open it up also. If scope goes up too much or if scope can't provide it, let the outside providers come in our building, which will help them, and let them run their program like we do with Scope. And we'll be meeting the state's mandate of getting certain percentage of our students covered by an outside agency that's in the district.
Yeah.
If
I
we have the
think-
space.
If we have the space. Remember, tonight I said it's 3 things, but it's going to be a lot about space.
Yeah, I just can't see this mandate. We have options, we have ways to finagle. I think we're gonna have to rely very heavily on outside providers, but that's for the next conversation. But I just don't see how this rolls out, and how anybody in the state can give me some statistics that say pre-K in a high school, has some benefits. And I know there's some part of this where
Let me skip ahead, because I think this is
Yeah.
the piece I want to answer, Ms. Timon Johnson. But can you skip Mike completely and go 3 slides ahead, and then we'll come back to So glad he came. Yeah, go one more, and then that's it. So I don't know why the spacing got thrown on us. Here's the piece, right? And there are districts that do this. To me, this is the exciting piece, which gets Ms. Johnson time into your part. If we ever did put it in a program in the high school, I would love, and I think this is an educational piece, where we would want to create a program to start training our West Babylon senior high school students toward jobs and education, whether it be daycare, whether it be early childhood education, whether it be education in general, right? And so getting our high school kids into these classrooms with our students, while it wouldn't be PTA events and things like that, I have heard unbelievably positive stories in districts where the high school kids are working with these kids under the supervision. This is not a freebie, right? This is a class. We would probably partner with a college to maybe get them some college credits, where they'd be working with these UPK students. And Mr. Palillo, I agree with you. You would not ordinarily want to put a UPK in a high school. This might be the exception why. Our high school kids would benefit as well as our UPK kids. It wouldn't be the same as being in the building, I get it. But the resources that we can now potentially give to our high school students and the ability for them to get a leapfrog ahead with a vocation that they may want to, which is there's a dramatic demand for, I think some of that outweighs it, right? Ordinarily, I would say to you, I wouldn't sit up here without this piece. I probably wouldn't sit up here and be excited about putting it into a high school, even for all the reasons I said. This piece, getting our high school students exposure to this vocational field that obviously there's a demand for, that there's potentially some a lot of employment opportunities for, I think that's the exciting piece for our kids. And I have heard it be phenomenally successful in other districts. So that's the curveball.
We had it here at West Babylon, called
Okay.
Child Development.
Right.
Family and Consumer Science.
Yeah, but this would be that, but a whole core, like not just one class.
yeah,
This would
this
be an
was a few
entire
weeks.
sequence where they'd be starting to and working with kids and then interacting with our own kids under supervision.
I mean, I think if that, I think it's like turning lemons into lemonade.
Right.
Where that is an advantage only because we're almost forced to do it. If I had heard every year since I've been here the request for that program in the high school, I'd say, oh, here's our opportunity. So, yeah, I think we have to do that, and I would probably have to be something where parents have to agree to it if they're
Right.
going to be assigned to that school. But don't we already have that program through BOCES? Would we then be saying it's only
This
gonna
would be
offered
like
here
us taking the automotive program and putting it in the high school, except we're
Right.
getting paid now by the state to do it.
Right, but we wouldn't offer both then.
Automotive and childcare?
No, what I'm saying, yeah, combine the two.
No, I don't think that would work.
Program. No, what I'm saying is if you're gonna
No.
offer a program in the high school that is also available at BOCES.
No, we keep it in our
only
high school,
here, You're
correct.
not paying
I-
the
I-
$16,000 per student.
I mean, I think it would have. I'm not going to say it would have been. It would have been proposed a long time ago. It's just the costs and the feasibility probably never warranted it.
Right.
This is a weird confluence of events where there might be. I'm not trying to sway anyone. There might be enough impetus to say this might be that perfect opportunity to start something. And I can't guarantee you the interest, but I would hope there would be a significant interest over
It'll be
time where
something
you would
new,
build it.
especially in the beginning. I think it would be something new.
I do know the jobs are there. Like we all know the jobs are there.
Yeah.
For high school students if they wanted future employment.
Yeah, do you know of situations where schools are doing that? I'd be curious as to the parents'
Yeah,
reaction
so the
to
best
that.
example I know is Northport, where they've had a long-term program there, and I visited a long time ago. It's been there for a long time. It is successful. It's very successful. Obviously, they've built it into a big program. I would, again, with the board's discussion, if this were an option, I would certainly go out and try to look for other comparable districts that are doing it.
I'm just curious as to the parent feedback on that, where it's a voluntary thing versus,
Right.
You get into your email that, this is what you're reporting to.
Right.
I feel like if it's going to be at the
100%
high
would be
school.
voluntary. It would be an elective. It would be a college elective program that they would take.
I'm talking about for the kids that are the pre-K kids.
Oh, the UPK kids, that's a great question. So here's how it would work. We would still do a lottery. First picks would get their choice of their home district. What we do now, though, is once you run past those home districts, you get placed somewhere else. And if you decline it, then we go to the next person. So there are already, in our UPK lottery, plenty of parents that aren't getting the selection that they want. This would be an extension of that. And you're right, if they didn't want to do that, they would simply pass up their opportunity to the next person on the lottery who would then have the opportunity to
That's
accept.
fine for next year, if we even move forward for next year.
Right.
But what about if there is a mandate? How do you manage that where there?
I would suggest you still do a lottery, right? You still do a fair lottery where everyone has an equal chance of getting the place they want, and then the further you are away, you don't necessarily get that option.
So a parent, it ends up from that lottery that they get assigned to the high school, and they say, well, I don't want my student,
Right.
I don't want my child being taught by,
Right.
whatever the reason may be. What's the alternative there?
Well, I think my response is, this is the seat we offered. You don't have to accept it.
What about the mandate?
The mandate is you have to offer them a seat. Again, I'm not an expert, that could
no.
change, right? I'm just
Yeah.
telling you. My piece would be for the district's perspective, we offer the seat, we've offered it.
Right. I understand what you're saying. All right. It's a tough one.
All right. Good.
Just so it's, well, I'm clear, we've had to cut some programs over the last couple of years that we have not been able to restore yet. Like the tech program, we still have kids that want to go to tech that we can't send to tech. How are we talking about implementing a new program? Where's the funding going to come from for this? But not
So-
for the
Right.
kids that wanted to go to BOCES.
The funding, and this is not a guarantee, right? The funding comes out of now housing those students at, and I'm making up a number, right? And I'm purposely telling you I'm not right on this. $6,100, but I'm getting $3,900. I'm getting $72,000 per class, which can be used to do exactly some of what you're talking about. The problem with the other tech programs is we never got that funding. We don't have an opportunity for any funding for those programs. Here, at least, there's an opportunity. There's just an opportunity. I'm not telling you it's a guarantee. Like, this is a false promise. At least here, there's an opportunity where I could say to you, there's a chance here of funding. The problem with some of the outside tech programs is not only is there no funding, it's out of the building and it's going to cost us money.
What's the, and this might be a Mike question, but like an
I hope
average.
so.
Like to take, for example, the print shop, right?
Right.
And to convert that. What's the construction cost on something like?
79, no, I don't know. I'm not going to let Mike. I'm going to let Mike. I don't know. There's a lot of ifs here. So I presented this as this move would be seamless. It's not seamless. Like, it is a big deal, and there's a lot of things the board have to consider. So I may be up here telling you, oh, yeah, we can just go in there. We can't. Like, there's a lot of things that have to be juggled, and each of them are going to be sequential. So you have to make up your mind here, and that could lead to this, this, and this, and it could be things that, and one of the things Mike's going to talk about, those rooms have to be tested. Right now, they don't necessarily have to be tested because some of them aren't housing students, the storage area, for example. But once we test it, we're in now. You're in for a penny and for a pound. So if it proves that there's things they're testing, right, then we've got to fix it no matter what. I'm quite certain there's nothing there, but I can't guarantee that to you.
But like, I'm thinking, for example, if it costs X amount of dollars, did we price out as well, maybe expanding one of our other elementary, if it logistically is possible to do
Yeah, so the
that?
big piece with this is that this is not new construction. This would be modifications of rooms. And, those rooms are technically, that there would have to be some things that have to be done. Technically, they've already been approved by state aid as student appropriate classes, albeit high school students, but it's already been approved by the state years ago.
Right, but construction costs would still be on us, correct?
Right.
Either way.
But there's two different types of construction. New construction will be subject to a whole host of new pieces where this would be modifications of existing rooms.
Mostly done in-house.
I'm not going to answer. Yes.
That's what
Yes.
I'm- that's what
No,
I
I'm
was-
not going to answer for.
So there are definitely a lot of next necessary steps. However, we're not, right, I don't want to give direction to continue down this path or continue down this path with testing, with numbers, with calling in for quotes. When we're talking about in terms of significant, actual construction happening, right? There may or may not, likely will be a need for the state to be involved in terms of different permits, right? So there's so many different arms, right, to this. But again, without kind of having this conversation here, even though we fully recognize there are so many different questions, right? We need to have some insight in terms of our group's thoughts, right, on what do we continue to pursue and to investigate, right, and dedicate time, energy, and ultimately, obviously, dollars to, right, in terms of this. Mike is going to, right, share some pieces, but that definitely, again, they're not hard numbers, right, in terms of those.
And one of the things you're going to ask Mike, because I want to watch this, is even if you said yes tonight, which you're not going to, can this even be done by next year? I don't know. That might not even. We might be talking about something 2 years out. So there's a lot of ifs here.
You
But
doubt his ability?
Yeah, no, I think Mike can do it. I just think he'll collapse, and then we won't have Mike.
A quick question.
Yes.
Because it's probably the number one question I get is, when is the predicted registration for pre-K?
So the predicted registration for
I know.
UPK is the day we get funding. However, we run the lottery well before that. We run the lottery at the end of March. That's the order. And we start to tell people based on the lottery, if there's state funding, you've got a slot. But until we actually get the money, we can't commit to anything.
Well, I mean, as far as them putting their name on that list.
Yeah, so the lottery list, I think that's going to start at the end of February, beginning of March, where they get a 2 or 3 week registration period, and the lottery's around the end of March right now.
The actual drawing of the names.
The actual
Okay.
drawing.
So end of February, beginning of March.
Yeah.
Okay.
And people are emailing, and that's kind of what we're telling them. We kind of, looks like this is coming out now the end of April, so we're going to work our way backwards from there and set that date. All right. I'm going to turn it over to Mike. Can you go, Bob, go back a couple slides? 10, 9 minutes slow. You're up? Okay, all right. I'll stand here.
How's it going, everybody?
Hi, Mike.
So 2 slides are basically my contribution here, and the first one is looking at leaning towards an in-house possibility. As Scott said, the committee looked across the district to really, from my facilities lens, I was looking at the requirements of the basics, fresh air, 2 means of egress, things like that. So one of the challenges here is, through the facilities lens is sort of a reoccupancy of the area, right? The tech wing at the high school was designed for a student population, a certain size, and things like that. Chris, you mentioned the physical barrier, right? So this area that's highlighted is the robotics lab, the print shop, including its storage area, and then because I was a little sloppy with the highlighter, it did throw in the offices for the tech shop and the bathroom that's down there. So bathrooms would have to be added. We'd have to verify fresh air intake. We do have a door buck already there. So we do have the ability to put up, order the doors to size, and now we've got the physical barrier. The print shop's about 1,200, 1,300 square feet. And the robotics shop is about 800, not including that back office area. So we're targeting 900 square foot classroom spaces for UPK, just like a kindergarten. That gets us about 18 pupils about. So that's kind of where we are here. But what is it going to take to be able to accomplish this? So the first thing is that we have to make sure that we environmentally test the area. We can't, we want to make sure that we take that liability off the table for the school district. So, lead, asbestos, mercury, things like that. I think that this is more in line with an in-house project. We would use our vendor services as needed. So, if we needed to put a bathroom in and things like that. I did talk to Michael Kosar from the State Education Department about this just through email, and he mentioned that his major concern was having that clear demarcation of this is the area for the UPK, this is the area for the high school students. So again, that is our kind of like groundbreaking area. I think if we went with something like this, it's going to get you 2 sections. If there's the drain tie-ins that are not buried, I think it's open underneath that, so we could get to all the drain apparatus. In the event that that's slab on grade and we have to take jackhammers out to get to the drains to tie in bathrooms, that's going to be another element of this in the cost. But again, it's all things considered, right? So right now, I do believe it's open air. I was on the other side of it, but not down on that side. And then again, the pictures are just showing you kind of what the space is being utilized for now. Robotics lab, as Scott said, is an after-school program, so it's not really a functioning thing that's during the school day. And the print shop, Kristen, just to answer your question, we do have a print shop that does operate at the junior high school also. It's on the second story, second floor, in probably like an 800 square foot classroom. The shop room that's currently available is matching, although the footprint isn't the same. The square footage is approximately 1,275 square feet. So that would absorb the print shop equipment that's there. Depending on the weight and the power requirements, we would be looking at, and again, you're going into a shop room, so most likely there's going to be the ability for us to get to 220 volts and things like that to equipment that may be needed. It's a challenge, there's no doubt about it, but I think it's a feasible one that we can definitely explore. Again, as Yendi said, if this is an interest to you, and we would move ahead with continuing. Bob, if you could just hit the next slide, please. So this is the whole enchilada, right? This is the area, and I got kind of a Google slide to depict the chunk of the building that would be taken, right, for UPK. And if you look at this, this incorporates the old maintenance shop, which is now a storage area. It also incorporates the wood shop and the 2 classrooms across the hallway. This would get you all of the sections required to meet the enrollment demand that's currently being asked upon the district. But this would pose more of an expense and more of a challenge to us to achieve, right? So
And
the
if I could, Mike, I
Sure.
apologize. Just so you're looking, I know that looks probably less than microscopic right now. The orange area is the shop that's being used for storage. The green areas, there's no way we can use those green areas. Those are current tech rooms, current rooms that are being used. And I don't really think right now we have a way to replace them. So if we ever did use those, that you'd be years down the road. The proposal Mike is saying predominantly here, because the committee did initially look at all those spaces, would be the yellow and the orange there. The print shop, the robotics room, and the empty shop right now, right? I mean,
correct.
we did look at those green rooms. There's no means of egress through those rooms, so you'd have an increased cost of creating that. And plus, I don't know where you'd even put some of those classes.
Right. So
You need the exit out of the classroom, separate from the doorway out of the
Right.
classroom.
Right, which each of the areas we're talking about today all have separate egresses, out. Some of them are garage doors that have to be converted to doors, but they all have egresses out.
yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's fine. And that was the other part is, reoccupancy, new occupancy. For this, we need two means of escape for the occupants of those areas. So again, this is the Goldilocks zone for us, right? If we kind of equate this to astronomy, we are looking at, this would give us 5 total sections, but again, it requires major modifications, especially on the hallway on the other side. There are windows that are emergency windows that are probably about this high, so just about 4 feet high, and that's not going to work for us to get little kids out of the building in the case of an emergency. So this would also this one especially requires an SED approval, so we would have our architect draw up the plans and send them up to the state for approval before we would be able to reoccupy or declare a reoccupancy of the space. Again, the yellow area I think is a little bit more feasible to get us going with two spaces in the immediate. It's just some of those variables with the plumbing and the timeline. That's pretty much all I got.
Right. So yellow is 2, orange is 1, green, I'm going to say is off the table. It's just not feasible. I just don't know where we would put them in the high school, nor do I think those spaces are as easy as the one Mike's are saying to get kids into.
So, but if we're looking at the number of kids that we still can't place, right, because of space, and 2, maybe 3 classrooms, we'd still be short.
Way short.
Yes.
And here's the
So we're
piece, just to
still-
be clear, Mike's looking into that orange being eventually, right, being 2 spaces. Because it's a big room. I don't know if it's big enough, right? Yeah, what are you gonna do? But the potential could be, if we're allowed to look into it, can we make 2 spaces out of that orange area, which is now that unoccupied shop, which would get us 4, which would still not be enough.
Right.
I'm just saying, just to be clear, the only benefit it gives us more seats. It gets us close to that goal, but it also, and I know I keep saying this, it gives our high school students now a viable program. 1 section doesn't do it for us. 2, honestly, it's probably not worth doing 2, in my opinion. We can do it if we plan to expand further, but if you get 3 or 4 sections, then I think you've got a nice, robust program to get high school kids in, to work with kids in different settings, and to really get an experience there.
My question is really just the security of the wing. Like you're talking about 4-year-olds that are 2.5 feet tall that are going to be in the same building as a 6'5" football player. So how can we ensure? I know you said there's a tight little overlap. It's not a big overlap. It's a dead end area, but there still could possibly be foot traffic between high school seniors and UPK kids. How can we ensure to the parents that that wing is going to be super secure for them? And then a follow-up to that is, how do we take out the white noise that the high school brings, like the bell ringing and all this other stuff that wing would have to now hear and be distracted on throughout their course of the day?
You're never going to give a 100% guarantee. Absolutely not. It's never going to happen. I do think I can tell you, out of all the spaces we looked at in the entire district, this is your best bet of isolating. I'm not trying to give you false salesmanship. I'm just telling you, this is your best opportunity. There is absolutely, once you get down that hallway, there's limited reasons for any kid to be there. So in the entire high school population, I'm going to say maybe a 20th of them on any given moment will even have a legitimate reason to be in that hallway, even the beginning of the hallway. Not to mention halfway or 3/4 of the way down. It still isn't a guarantee. I'm just saying this is your best chance.
No.
As far as the bells, you turn them off there, but you still can't isolate it. You'll never be able to isolate it completely.
I mean, and I can appreciate that.
Right.
I just know that there's going to be a group of parents who
100%.
are not going to accept that.
And I think
you
we
know?
learn, and the only thing I can say to you is, and that's the only thing we do, is learn from the schools that are doing it, and they have run into the same problem. Don't repeat the same thing. Try to figure out what they're doing, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work.
Right.
But there are schools that are doing this in high schools for the reasons that I said,
Right.
and we would try to get what they did and copy it.
I can appreciate the program that you offered. The
Well,
only
I'm
other
not offering it
aspect that I
because
can
I'm not paying for it. So.
No, but that you suggested, right?
Right.
And I can appreciate that. The only other thing I think takes away is the elementary school feel that
100%.
the children would feel if they're in a true traditional elementary school versus in a high school. There's an element to that that's now being taken away,
Right.
and now you're asking the PTAs, and not you generally, you specifically,
No, I get it.
but generally, you're asking the elementary school PTAs now to kind of get involved with a group of kids that are kind of on the outside, maybe not telling them to do it, but they'll feel a sense of obligation to include them.
Right.
So that's kind of how I feel about that, but okay.
Yep.
Just to my understanding, maybe 2 years ago was the first year that the PTA started to include the UPK into
Right.
their little world. And just in my experience this year, they've kind of had to scale back on what they let the UPK kids participate in throughout the school day anyway. So meaning they're not
Yeah.
going to as many assemblies that they previously had because of scheduling. There's just numbers-wise, pupil-wise, they can't get them in.
I don't know. I mean, I can't.
So I
I'm
don't
sure
know
it's
how
different in
much-
every building.
We're
Yeah.
assuming they're contacting the pupils within the building, but they might not be. So it's just another
No, fair.
conversation.
I mean, no, fair enough. It's just that still, it's not an elementary school, you know. So that's the. I think what the parents are going to grip on is the fact that it's not an elementary school building. You're talking about a secondary high school
Right.
with very tall kids
Yeah.
that are going to that school.
The only,
It's going to
and
be an
I
issue.
don't disagree. I think the piece is this would be a unique place, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because they're all in one center, there would be possibilities of before and after school care, which we're not able to do in the elementary. There are other pieces that for some parents, that may be okay. And you're right, for many parents, it may not be okay. I can't,
Mm-hmm. Right.
you're 100% right.
And I'm sure Mike will do a great job in converting it if this is the
I
way
hope
that
so.
we
That's
go.
why he's
But
here.
you know, at the end of the day, it's still the high school. So.
Mike,
Correct.
one quick question for you. I know they talked about if we took away these big classrooms for shop, for tech, tech's a big thing in our school. A lot of kids are involved in these programs. And we cram this wood shop and robotic shop and all these other shops into a classroom-sized setting. Is that really feasible, or are these going to be
Well, let me take that,
miniaturized?
because there's not one tech space that would be lost under this plan.
Right.
Not one.
I mean, the wood shop would be able to fit into another room?
We would not be losing a wood shop. This is not proposing taking any tech space at all. The only classroom space that would be taken would be the robotics labs, which is only used after school. So no classroom, no high school program that's given during the day will be affected directly by this.
So now, along those lines with the
This
technology.
place looks like I thought it was a wood shop.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, so right now, could they grow? Like that space, that's the only place the technology department can grow is that technology room, which is not right now currently can be used by students. So from the question that you're asking, could they grow? They could potentially still grow. The only place they can't grow is that orange area, if we use it for UPK. That's the only thing I can think of. Yeah.
How aggressively are we approaching outside resources? Going to churches, daycare centers, and stuff like that?
I don't know how to answer that. Like, we're presenting it as this is the opportunity. I'm not telling them to make a decision, nor am I promising things that I can't do. Right? There's a whole curricular component here that they have to follow, that Scope follows. State reports that have to be filled out. There are things that they have to do that I'm not going to say to them, oh, guess what? We'll take care of this, and then I'm not. Right? I just can't do it. I can't guarantee them certified teachers. I can't guarantee them when a certified teacher leaves that they're going to be able to hire someone. right? 'Cause those are all real restrictions. So I'm telling you, I'm not making false promises to these agencies because I know how difficult this will be. And I know what happened this past example. I didn't think of insurance. I got to be honest. I feel bad. I didn't even know there was a separate insurance policy need to be had. And Our Lady of Grace, who was willing to do it, couldn't do it, right? So I think it's got to be a business decision that they make, and I'll help them every way I can. But it really has to be them that's making the decision of whether they can feasibly pull it off based on the space that they currently have and the money that they're taking in, right? Because I know we looked at a few of the places, and they said to me, it doesn't make financial sense to me because I can keep kids here right now, and I can get them for before school, I can get them during school, and I can give them after school. The parents are paying for all that, and all you're going to pay me for is the during school. So I don't even know if the $10,000 is enough to say that's going to make up for the before and after school. So I just don't know their business models. I do know, and Yendi even spoke to one of the buildings. I don't know financially where they are and if they could pull it off and how much space they have.
Okay.
So sorry. I mean, I wish I can give you a better answer, Mr. Rockman. I just don't know.
So because of the fact that we do have the space restrictions, right, we want to ensure that the board, right, that the board is aware, right, of all of these different options, right? Because in the absence of us doing this, right, and Mr. Payne establishing the committee, right, and all of us meeting and going through all these different areas, right, if we don't do that, right, and we just go, okay, next year we can have 4 UPK classrooms, right, after when everything is set, or 5 UPK classrooms, and there will be 80 students on the wait list, right? The board obviously is going to receive that inquiry, right? Well, have you explored other options? Have you explored other spaces? But your enrollment is down. Your high school used to have X number of 100 students more. You have less. Have you looked at the high school, right? So we want to put the board in a position where, and the admin team, right, where we've explored these options, right, and determined, obviously the fiscal piece is a major component to this, right? Up until this point, in terms of some of these, actual changes, right, and the actual physical changes to the bathrooms or the classrooms, right, the construction pieces to that. For the most part, right, it's been funded through, that's not the case, by the way, in other school districts, right? Other school districts have run, some UPKs, and they've hired full-time teachers, right, and kind of blended the state, right, with some general fund budget. From the beginning, that hasn't been the case for us, right? So this is now different, right? Because it does mean that we would need to expend some money, right? In terms of materials, in terms of supplies, in terms of personnel. The initial proposal here seems to be that our team, right, would be able to address those, but we will have some outside contractors do those testing, right, requirements, right, for the rooms. So there is a financial piece to that, right? So again, we want to make sure that the admin team and the board, right, has explored all these avenues, and if ultimately it does mean that, and again, put aside over here will this be a requirement or not in terms of 2028, 29 school year, right? We don't know that yet. Assuming the same parameters of you offer based on your space availability. Again, the 2029 has been mentioned as a requirement. If the answer is, thank you, admin team, right, we have enough information, right, let's offer what we're able to within our elementary schools, and whatever outside, right, are able to give us. Again, it's a tough piece, right, because in the last slide, right, we're asking kind of for the board to think about some of these questions, and we can start talking about them tonight and continue that in the next meeting as well, because there's so much in the air, right, so much is not guaranteed from the state perspective, in terms of the funding, in terms of we can go out there and Mr. Payne has started this process already. Here's the number, here's the this, what do you think? They commit, but then they pull, right? We could establish a system where those letters to those families say, this is tentative at Our Lady of Blank or this place or that place. There's a lot of unknown, and then ultimately, obviously, then those families, if there is a change, they get directly impacted because it's June and they're looking for a pre-K program, right? So it's a tough piece because a lot of uncertain pieces that aren't dependent on us.
Yeah. I think
Right, that are out of
from
our
a board
hands.
perspective, and I'll go out on a limb and say we all support pre-K, especially since it's being funded by us technically. But and as many kids as we can get would be great into the pre-K program. There's a line though into what we would tolerate to do that. And this may be it, maybe not be it. I can't speak for everybody. I don't know that. But to say, there are years where we may have more sections. Student services may change, and certain classrooms may change. Incoming kids, so we can go to 4, we can go to 5, we can go to 6, we can go back to 4. I mean, that would flex outside of the mandate. But when it comes to the mandate, and you have a perspective from other superintendents, there's districts that don't even offer it now, can't do, probably looking at the same thing we are. What are they saying? How would some of those districts who've consolidated multiple schools over and over the years, how would they react?
They're having similar discussions, right? So I can share with you, right, one of our colleagues, they had a couple of their classrooms that were rented by an outside provider, and that contract fell through. And the superintendent just shared with me, actually, it's a blessing in disguise because I'm going to need those classrooms for UPK, right? So everyone is definitely kind of taking a look at what's available to them. There are also some provisions that we would love for the state to maybe kind of open up, right? Could there be some regional,
Right.
Avenues, right, to pursue, right, within certain areas? They seem to be making some changes in the right direction, right, in terms of the dollar change, assuming that gets approved again with New York State, combining those two grants as opposed to having, a different application. So additional kind of leeway in how districts do that will certainly also be helpful, but absolutely, Chris, across the board, everyone is having the same conversations of they don't have
Right.
the space.
Yeah,
for it.
I just can't. I mentioned to you earlier. I can't say, okay, 2028 comes, and if you don't have space for every student who applies, I mean, they're going to start having the whole funding conversation, withholding funding. I mean, I just can't see the entire, the entire district structure, especially on Long Island, of space and construction and wings being put on. It's article after article about fiscal stress, and here we are. We kind of turned a corner, and it's. I just can't see that that's going to be how it goes. And if there's an opportunity that we sit down with our representatives face to face and alert them to some of these concerns, not through a letter, but through a conversation, to let them know the realities of what's out there. It's an election year, so I know this idea is a big thing in an election year, and I'm sure those who are going to want to offer answers, our elected officials, they have to come to the table as well, because I just can't see this being rolled out in
Yeah, I
2
mean,
years.
listen, I'm going to give you my 2 cents for a little it's worth, about 2 cents. I wouldn't do this for fear of the mandate. It's going to change 500 times before that date comes.
Right.
We have to mention that to you, and that's the piece from the
Yeah,
state.
absolutely.
But it would be silly for me to say to all of you, react to this mandate now, because we know it's going to change 80 times. Don't do it for that reason.
Right. Now, back to the outside providers, I guess you re-engaged with some of them?
Starting to re-engage now, right? Working with the different community members to try to start to say how many kids are we going to have, working on the numbers first, and then I've got to go out and start to present how many sections are we going to potentially offer. It looks like, I didn't put on this piece, we had 204 applicants this year. We're guessing for next year, which I'm trying to get the numbers first, like 184 so far. So now that I have that number, I can go and tell specifically how many sections I need and then how many they would potentially want to take or have. Right. So right up until probably last week, I really don't have firm numbers of how many we have. I would say this week or next week, I'm going to have enough to say it looks like it's plateauing at 184 for the number of people interested in UPK for next year. That's going to tell me 10 sections, right? Perfect world scenario, maybe 9, right, if you want a bigger wait list. And so if we house 5 here, that's 5 outside or 4 outside or wherever else.
Besides the money factor that you spoke about with the outside providers, they can't lose,
Right.
money. What were some of the other obstacles, maybe as far as requirements, that
I'm going to get myself in trouble. The state is just sometimes difficult with the reporting and what they require, right? I mean, we're used to it because we deal with it all the time, but some of these private agencies don't want to deal with it.
Right.
It's really, honestly, it's just a pain in the neck sometimes, and I get it. Like, I'm not condemning it. I'm not condoning it either. But it's sometimes difficult to meet all the demands of what they want, and you're trying to run a business, and you're like, come on, just let me I'm doing the right thing here. So I'm going to say off the record, I think some of that is a piece too. there are some pieces where they probably know, like, it's not worth it for me. For the little I'm going to get, it's not worth the deal with the headache of running into an audit, because every one of them could be audited now.
Yeah.
And that's an exhaustive process.
Right.
All right, that went well. No, I'm kidding.
Supposed to be a workshop.
I'm kidding. It was definitely a workshop for me. All right, we good? Mike, we want Mike for anything else? I thought you'd ask him harder questions, so I'm a little disappointed.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate you coming out.
You can stay. You're more than welcome to stay.
So
All right.
I think in terms of, if we could, right, let's continue this conversation during the next meeting, right? We have a meeting on February 10th, right? The last page here, right? Do we want to continue to really consider, right, the senior high school or not, right? Do we want, just, again, we laid out kind of some questions there, so if the board can just think about it, right, of course, obviously reach out, right, in the next couple of days with any additional follow-up questions. I understand that there's a lot of unknown, but we really would like to continue this conversation in the next meeting and possibly the next one, right, so that we have a direction on whether or not to continue to pursue some things.
Yeah, this
versus
is as hard
the
as it
other.
gets, because even if everyone said yes, I can tell you there's a large chance that it's still going to be no based on the building and the state, the state requirements and all that. So I rest assured, this is no way in shape is this an easy decision. Even if you wanted to, there's a good chance, Mike will have to come back and say, we can't do it. Mike's very optimistic, and I would put my money on him. But there's so many requirements that we might not even be aware of right now that even if everyone said yes, we probably could still come back to you and say it's not going to happen at the high school.
Or the bigger thing too is when you jackhammer the concrete, you realize, the whole freaking plumbing system.
100%, right.
It's not going
Right.
to be. It's not going to be.
No
This is
construction.
what's
estimate
happening
this
when you
scope of
open-
work.
right.
You're going to break up
100%.
an old floor tile, and
Right.
a speck of something's going to come back.
And I do think, when the community needs to hear, this is not an easy decision, and no matter what happens, telling you to plan for a $500,000 water main break is not the right answer here, so.
Right.
Right, yep.
Is there any chance that the state helps us cover any of this in terms of any work that we have to do in order to make a building or a section UPK compliant, if you will?
Well, I'm always optimistic, so I will say that there is always a chance that miracles can happen, right?
But the answer is
the
no.
odds are no. The odds are,
They'd be giving money to every
Probably
district on his island.
not, right?
Right,
I mean, I think someone mentioned, right, like Ms. Johnson-Timon mentioned the, ideally, right, it would be great in terms of extensions of elementary buildings, right?
Right.
We're talking significant capital work,
Right.
and we're talking in the millions, right, of dollars to do so, right? When you factor in the architect fees,
Yeah.
forget the construction piece, right? All of the elements that are required with New York State with any sort of new construction project, like an extension, we're talking millions, right?
Okay.
So they would have to commit to having enough funding to do that across the board for everybody. Highly unlikely.
In its entirety. If they're going to say it's a fully funded program, then it has to be
unlikely.
fully funded. It's just.
All right.
Okay.
Next.
Thank you.
Next topic,
Not at all.
please.
Bob, we're
Thank
gonna
you, Mr.
hit
Payne.
Yeah, well, that's nice of you to say.
He's not done.
No,
This-
he's
this
not.
one will go
He's
much-
gonna pivot.
this will go
Oh,
much
wait,
better.
there's more, yes.
It's the
Now
year
we're
of
gonna
pain.
pivot
Or I'll just
to
fade out this door.
secondary world.
Right, Mike's taking one of them.
Bye, Mike.
Good night, Mike.
All right,
Thank
Bob,
you.
there's another presentation called New Courses. Got a smiley face on it. No, it doesn't. All right, so there's only two, as of course by policy, but also out of respect and design. We always present new courses to the Board of Education. These are, I think, two relatively easy ones. I say that now. The first one, if you can hit it, Bob, is at the high school. Talk to the senior high school science department, to Mr. O'Leary, to his administrative staff. They want to propose a non-Regents physics class. And this would be for students that did not want to take the physics Regents, but still wanted to take a physical science. The only alternative for them now is really environmental AP or environmental science. This is sort of a different route for them to take. In my opinion, this is a nice piece. There's a no-brainer here. If you can get kids taking science, which probably was going to be their 11th or 12th grade year, where they wouldn't be taking it, and they're going to get this exposure, It comes at very little cost, and you're probably not going to cost you anything, or if not much, if it costs you another section, maybe. But you're going to probably get kids who might have just dropped out of Regents Physics. At least now they have someplace to go. And we do get a sizable number of kids who drop out of Regents Physics that have no place to go. So this would be the new course. I do think it's a nice idea. It would give students, again, just an extra period of science that they don't have to take the Regents and be dependent upon that course load. So how would it change? You'd still be covering the same topics. You just wouldn't have to pound into some of the depth and maybe as much of the math, and you can get into maybe some of the more fun stuff of science without having to worry about that Regents curriculum. Whew, that went well. Next. Junior high school.
Is there any construction involved?
Yes, yeah, you have to take off the entire technology wing.
There we go. All right.
Yes, go ahead.
So if a student took the Regents Physics course in 11th grade, right, can they take this course as an elective as well?
They could. It'd be absolutely, it'd be silly for them to do it. This would be an easier course that would, I mean, I would say no. No, not at all. No, you got to take, you take one life, one physical, and usually they meet that criteria. This would be for kids who still want to take science but just don't want to go down another path.
And we have the personnel on hand that would teach this
Yeah.
already?
So yeah, this wouldn't change personnel.
Wouldn't change personnel. I don't foresee, I mean, honestly, and when I talked to the high school at length about this, we're probably looking at one section of kids that would be interested in this. Two would be a miracle. Anything more, it wouldn't, anything more than that would never happen.
Did we offer this in the past?
We've never offered this.
Okay.
So you talk about a small cost. What small cost do we speak
So
of?
what you potentially run into, like any course, whenever you create a singleton, you run the risk of changing. So let's say, let's say you had 48 kids taking Regents, and then you have 12 that now want to take non-Regents. You could potentially then have 36 kids who want to take Regents, still two sections, and now you have 12 that want to take non-Regents, so you have now an extra course. But you run the risk with any elective of kids that want to take it. You gotta still put someone in there. I think there's enough physics where you're probably not going to, I think, right, I'm guessing, where you're not going to see it run that extreme like I just said. You're running exactly two courses. So there's going to be enough room in each of the courses where you could probably just flow into another one.
You had interest for some of the students?
They're saying at the high school there's interest from the students for this, yes.
Okay, cool.
And
All
I
right.
believe in terms of sections that it will either be even, and if not even in terms of number of sections, maybe an additional one.
Yeah, worst, and Mr. Hanley's very good at this, not at physics, but at this. I'm probably better at him than physics. But the idea that there's enough sections of physics where you probably, if you pulled enough for this section, it would really then just be decreasing the number of region sections, so you'd kind of be able to do it. Don't answer. All right, here we go. All right, junior high school. This one, I think, also is relatively easy for different reasons. When I was principal, we had this class. It's a 7H class. The idea behind this is not exclusive, but the idea behind this is there are new changes. You're going to hear next week from me. I think, is it next week? Oh, I feel bad for you. Of the new changes in science, right, and some of the professional development associated with that. The idea here is if students are taking 8th grade earth science, where there are some significant changes in the curriculum and in the state requirements for the curriculum, if you can give them a 7th grade honors science class where they can get some of that background, as well as now when you're taking earth science, you're also missing 8th grade physical science to get some of the 8th grade components that eventually you might be missing. This is a nice opportunity. The reason why this is a nice opportunity is because it's not being pulled from any other class. The only other thing kids are in at the junior high school during this time is English lab. And the kids who probably would qualify for science honors probably don't need English lab. So it really, there's no real staffing change here other than the teachers that are teaching it. The kids are going somewhere no matter what. This is a better opportunity for them. The one thing I have talked to the junior high school about, if they're watching, they're committed to this. If a kid doesn't take 7th grade honors science, they still need the opportunity to be able to get into 8th grade earth science, because you don't want to start cutting kids off, and I always felt strongly about that. Otherwise, you're cutting kids off in 6th grade as to what they're going to do in 8th grade. It's certainly going to be harder for them if they don't take this. There's more work, but they should still have every opportunity to get the 8th grade accelerated. So that would be this proposal. Told you this was better. That's it.
Questions? are we okay with adding this to our course guides and continuing, right, our normal process and adding these as course options?
Yeah.
Sounds good.
We're
There's a
good?
reason why I ended with that, so.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Payne.
Nothing else for tonight? That's it?
Believe me, I'm glad you didn't throw me out.
Okay, statement of residents on agenda items only. Residents wishing to share a statement. Residents must state their name, address, and any organization they represent. They can also write this information on an index card and give it to the Assistant Superintendent for Finance and Operations. Comments about individual students or employees are not permitted. Each resident will have up to 3 minutes to speak, with a total of 15 minutes allotted. Residents will be given, responses will be given after all statements. Questions needing further research will be addressed to the next meeting.
Good evening, folks. Chris, you told me last time that after I went through the chain of command, I could come back to you if I wasn't satisfied with the response to come and ask the board for some help. So here I am to ask the board for some help. I did have communication with Yendi, and I will tell you the response from her was the same as the gentleman from the transportation company, and quite frankly, it's not acceptable. My child will not be put back on the bus. There's no security ensured. As the first incident that wasn't reported by my child, she was the one who reported the second incident when it happened, and that happened when a West Babylon school bus driver was driving. There's been plenty of talk about the consequences given by the building to the child who was guilty of being the aggressor. However, there's no talk of consequence to the bus drivers of these vehicles who are responsible for safe transportation of our children. It is the district's responsibility to provide safe transportation because she is not within walking distance of the school, and there has been gross negligence to do so. There is no possible way for you to ensure that a Suffolk County bus driver is going to follow West Babylon protocol as their subcontractor. They may not be privy to each bus's seating arrangement, and quite frankly, they just may not care. The board's decision to consolidate elementary schools not only caused my child emotional distress by choosing to modify the elementary schools during her 5th grade year, when she doesn't get to graduate now with the children that she went to elementary school for 5 years, but now you're also responsible for not protecting her on the transportation that is provided and encouraging her to be in the same space as her attacker. As adults who claim to be concerned with the safety and well-being of our children and hiring way too many psychologists for the district because you're worried about their mental health, you're failing at both of these responsibilities to my child. Rather than protecting your management team, I really ask you guys to strongly reconsider and put forth further thought into how you can do the correct thing for my child, other than telling us to have her let someone know if she's being assaulted on the bus again. Because for a child to be told, well, scream louder when there's an adult who's responsible to watch these children on the bus, stand there and get hit in the head 10 times, but scream a little louder. Maybe you'll end up with getting a concussion
You're
first.
weaving in and out of the personal information and specificity of your situation. We can discuss further with the superintendent in executive session.
If you would, I would greatly
That's what we
appreciate
can do.
it.
I cannot discuss it with you publicly. So, I understand you're not happy with whatever was arranged or whatever was discussed. We can discuss it further in executive session, but I cannot have that discussion with you publicly.
How am I going to have results from you guys? Is it going to be via
Send
email?
the request to Indy to formally request that the issue you already talked to her about be discussed in executive session, that you're asking the board to make an exception to the policy or the determination she's made, and she will bring it to our attention and we will discuss it.
Okay.
You will then get a response from, I guess, the district clerk.
Yeah, because it's individual, right? So they would have
Yeah.
the discussion in executive session. So-
You would not have, I would not be responding to it here either way. So you
Okay.
will get, we will discuss it in executive session, and then you would get a formal response that
Oh.
way. Just like we have with every request for busing and school changes, it's
Anything
the same
student
procedure.
specific.
'Cause it's
Right,
so
so
specific.
Yendi, you should have responded to my email because this was my
I'll
exact
use
email to
everything that
you.
I'll use everything
You
you
should
shared
have
with me.
responded to me. I would not have had to stand here and said this to the board. If you would have said to me, you need to make that request for me to speak, to have it done in private session, I would have done that rather than coming here. It's a waste of
understand.
my time, it's a waste of your time, and
I understand.
It's not a
The-
waste of our time.
No,
We're here anyway.
Not at all. The ending was that, you know, you were not accepting of my decision, right? So the follow-up piece there, I'll take all of that information and I'll bring it to the board, right, for them to review all of it.
Okay, so do you need me to send you the email to request it, or
No,
you're just gonna do
I
that?
could use all the information that you shared.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you.
Anyone else? Nope. Okay. We need a motion to approve the consent agenda. Anthony, John, all those in favor? Okay. Policy review, any old business? Nope. New business? You had enough? That's good. All right, statement of residence. Any resident wishing to make a statement, please come to the podium, state their name, address, any organization they represent. You can also write this information on an index card and give it to the Assistant Superintendent of Finance and Operations. Comments about individual students or employees are not permitted. Each resident will have up to 3 minutes to speak, with a total of 15 minutes allotted. Responses will be given after all statements, and questions needing further research will be addressed at the next meeting. That's it? Okay. You know, motion to adjourn. Frank, John, all those in favor? Okay, that's everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Appreciate
everyone.
it.
Good night, when we have meeting next Tuesday.